1.21 gigawatts. Great Scott!
Shall we play a game?
Would you like a jelly baby?
Engage auto systems.
Aye. Engaged.
Clear all moorings.
Cleared, sir.
1/4 impulse power.
You know how to fly, don't you?
No. Do you?
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
Down here, it's our time. It's our time down here.
The Force will be with you, always.
Hi, and welcome to the Geek Hangout podcast. My name is Mark, and I am joined tonight, as always, by my good friend and co-host, Grant. How you doing tonight, Grant?
Hey, Mark. How you doing? Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning into the Geek Hangout podcast. This is episode 80, right?
Yes, we're at episode 80.
So we got a nice show for you tonight. We're going to talk about Ashoka, catch up on it. I think we talked about maybe the first two episodes, but now we're up to episode 6, right? Yes. 6 was it just premiered last night and or today.
Yeah, you had talked a little bit about episode 3. I hadn't seen it yet when we last recorded, but now I'm all caught up to everything.
Right. Okay. All right. So we're talk all about Ashoka tonight, and that's pretty much it. Not much else happening in the world of geek right now. Everybody seems to be laying low.
Well, the strike's not helping anything.
I know, and I think they're panicking. Like everything's like they're trying to stretch everything out as long as possible now.
Right.
In terms of content. So
yeah.
But so with that in mind, we'll throw it back to Mark and ask what you've been up to. What's going on?
I have been up to nothing. Like I haven't really, because we really only recorded like 2 weeks ago, so I haven't really done anything new. I've been trying to play video games, but I haven't had time. Just a lot going on. So, but what I did want to mention is that during that time, Disney had one of their sort of like fan events, Destination D23 or whatever it was called.
Right. Yeah.
And they made some announcements there about the stuff that's going to be going on in the park, which I thought was a little bit interesting. So I just thought I'd mention it here.
Okay.
Because we like Disney.
Yeah.
On top of everything else.
Oh yeah. I mean, so, definitely a nice geek element to the parks and all that. I like all that stuff too.
Yeah. So there wasn't a whole lot of Star Wars news but they made some announcements for Walt Disney World where they're going to make some real change, a bunch of changes to that park, and to the all of the parks really. So like Animal Kingdom is, where Dino Land is in Animal Kingdom, so that's apparently going to go away, and they're switching Dino Land over to sort of like a Central American, South American, Central American kind of like themed,
right?
And and I guess they're going to put Encanto in there.
Yes,
movie. So they'll have that because that's sort of based in Colombia or whatever. So there's gonna be an area there for that. But one of the really interesting things is that the dinosaur ride that's there now,
right,
which is the sort of the exact same system as the Indiana Jones ride in Disneyland.
Okay.
Apparently they're gonna convert the dinosaur ride to an Indiana Jones ride, so that's cool. kind of exciting, and I'm really happy about that. I've never been to Disneyland, and and I desperately want to go on the Indiana Jones ride. So I've always been kind of bitter that Disney World doesn't have one.
Yep. Yeah.
So I'm really excited about that. That's a good. I think that's a good. And there's people that are complaining about it because it doesn't fit or whatever. I don't care.
No, I mean, at this point, I feel like, it's Disney and they have all their parks, but like, I feel like everything's a hodgepodge. Like there's no, there's really no like grand theming of the parks anymore. It's like, let's put Indiana Jones right here. Let's middle of Epcot, World Showcase, Guardians of the Galaxy. It just doesn't matter anymore.
I mean, I'd like them to stay with the theme of, since it's a theme park, but like, I don't know. It's like, I think you could very easily, look, if you're going to make that a Central American theme, it doesn't like this Indiana Jones ride doesn't have to be exactly like the one in Disneyland. You could you know, throw some Machu Picchu references in it, and
Right.
boom, there you go. It fits,
I know. Yeah.
and
Well, to be
I think
honest,
that's fine.
yeah. I watched this is before they announced all this, but I watched like a ride through of that Indiana Jones and the Temple of Peril. Is
I'm
that
not even sure. I'm not even sure.
I think that's what that ride's called. But I watched like a sit down, somebody did a ride through of it. And not for anything. I mean, the ride looked fun and all that stuff, but like not for anything. But I mean, it looks like it takes place in a jungle. So I guess it could easily have been, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what the theming of the ride actually was, but like, usually if it's like the opening of Raiders, I always assumed he was in South
Right.
America
Yeah,
somewhere.
right. Exactly.
So
Right.
so I think the theming should work. Yeah, and like I said, even if it doesn't technically work, you can make it, they can make it work, with
Right.
a few odds and ends, a few change the dialogue slightly, maybe.
He may even be like, you could probably, how they do the plane thing. Maybe he is in South America. I've never actually, I don't remember for sure. But you know how they do that plane thing that they
Yeah,
do?
yeah.
He might be. Well, we'll have to do some homework on that and get back
I
to you.
know, right? I'm almost, now that we're saying, I'm almost positive he is in South
I
America.
think you're right. I think he is in South
Yeah,
America.
because
Because I always sort of thought the same thing.
yeah, because I mean, Africa, you think of the jungle, but really Africa, when he's in Africa, is all the desert in northern Africa. That's where all
Right.
the all that stuff is. So I'm pretty sure he's in, maybe Central America. I don't know, but whatever,
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So I was excited to hear about that.
That's cool.
That's pretty cool. Some changes coming to Epcot. I guess they're getting so they had a new nighttime. They're getting a new nighttime show, which was because they had illuminations there for a really long time,
Right.
and then they got rid of illuminations and they put something else in its place that everybody hated.
Oh,
And now,
okay.
because I think they had illuminations for like 20 years. I think the illuminations started. I think it was for the millennium.
Oh,
That's
all
when it
right.
started, or around there. So illuminations had been around for 20 years. It was a great show. I loved it, but they got rid of it, put a new show in there that was terrible. Everybody hated it. Now they got rid of that. Now they're bringing in a new show. So that's that.
Okay, that's interesting. All
Yeah.
right.
So hopefully it's at least comparable to Illuminations.
Yeah.
What else is going on at Epcot? Test Track is getting updated.
Oh, I did see that. Yeah, that
Yeah.
looked neat.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. So that's going to be cool. They have a new area there called Moana it's like themed to Moana, and it's like a water area or something.
Yeah, yeah.
That's not open yet, but it's going to be open in October. So they were talking about that for a little bit. In Magic Kingdom, they're putting in there's a place across from Pirates of the Caribbean called Tortuga Tavern.
Okay.
It's like a restaurant, but it's not very well themed, and it's not a great restaurant. So it kind of sit there, but apparently they're going to update that, and they're going to make it like an actual like pirate themed restaurant.
Oh, that's
fun. Really cool.
Yeah.
Anytime you add more pirates, I'm on board with
I know,
that.
right?
Yeah. And what else is going on? Country Bear Jamboree is going to get an update.
Okay, yeah.
And then they talked about a whole new land that they're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's kind of exciting. It sounds like they know that they're going to build a new land, but at this point, like, this was the most blue sky of the things that they talked about.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It sounds like they know they're going to build a new land, but they're not entirely sure what they're going to do with it. So it's going to be back beyond, where Big Thunder Mountain is, in Frontierland, I guess that is. There's an area beyond that that's where the land is going to be. They're going to build beyond Big Thunder Mountain, and lots of rumors flying around. Some people think that a lot of people have been like clamoring for a villains area, so that they're, and Justin Morrow said that whatever they build is going to be like on par with what they did with Pandora or what they did with Galaxy's Edge.
Okay.
So
all right.
So that usually means, I mean, at least if he follows the model they've done, that's 2 rides,
right?
Probably a restaurant or several restaurants, and like some merchandise locations.
Yeah, but like heavy theming.
Right.
Like, I've never been to the Avatar thing, but I mean, Galaxy's Edge was, they put a lot of money just into the area. You type of, so that's interesting.
Yeah. So not sure what it's going to be yet. Like I said, a lot of people are clamoring for like a villains area, and villains are very popular. I do think they may at least do part of that. I mean, I think they're leaving money on the table by not doing a villains thing. People love the villains, like all the Disney villains.
Right.
So I don't know. We'll see. But that's pretty exciting for what's coming.
Right.
You know?
What's in so like you mentioned Thunder Mountain, that's part of Frontierland.
Yes.
What else is in Frontierland?
So, well, it was Splash Mountain, but Splash Mountain is now going to be the Tiana's
and
thing.
they're incorporating that more into aren't they incorporating that more into
Princess and the Frog? It's going to be
yeah, but isn't no, I'm sorry, but aren't they incorporating that part of the land more into the what is it, Liberty Square? Aren't they incorporating it, or no?
I don't think they can, because where it is, it's like at the very back of Frontierland.
Oh, so
you'd have to
remember
cut out.
I can't remember what's like behind it right there.
Yeah. So you'd have to cut out a bunch of stuff in Frontierland in order for that to connect.
Oh, I see.
So
okay.
That's still going to be considered Frontierland, and I guess it sort of makes sense. I mean, even though it's 1920s,
yeah. Well, that's what I was wondering. Like Frontierland, as historically speaking, it's important. Was important to the park, but like as time goes on, I that's what I was getting at, is like how how relevant is Frontierland anymore?
Right, right.
Like, people walk through there, they're like, what? Nobody, the kids forget really quickly. But what is Pirates considered part of?
That's Adventureland.
Adventureland. Okay, okay, yeah.
And then the I think the Pecos Bills restaurant, which is sort of like right near Splash Mountain, or where Splash Mountain was, is going to become a Tiana's restaurant.
Yes, I did see that. I matter of fact, I saw a video where they walked in and did something there, and it looks really cute. Like it looks, it's like Tiana's restaurant and stuff. Right. I remember going to see that with the kid, the girls when they were little, and so that I always liked that movie. It was like cute, and so that's what it reminded me of, walking in there. Just like I'm like, it's a good
movie. It's a good movie.
Yeah.
Not my favorite, but it's a good movie.
Yeah.
But what's weird is like because Country Bears is like between, that's what would make the Liberty Square thing not work, because Country Bears is in there.
Okay.
So it would almost be like, it's like in the middle of all of that. So I don't know how you'd cut that off. And
you'd have to, right.
So I don't know exactly what they're going to do, but
suddenly Disney World is Magic Kingdom gets like gerrymandered.
Right, exactly.
Like,
exactly.
Oh, no, that's still Frontierland.
Country Bears.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was some announcements. I mean, there was other stuff too. I think, they've started bringing in Galaxy's Edge, at least in Disneyland. I don't know if they're doing this stuff in World yet or not, but like they're bringing in characters from Ahsoka, which I think is really cool. Hera's been there. I think they have Chopper running around, which is really cool. Ahsoka's there. Like, so that's really cool stuff. I mean, I really hope, because the Star Cruiser is probably going to shut down in the next week. I think it shuts down the 26th.
Okay,
if I'm not mistaken. So hopefully when that happens, we get to see some of that stuff.
Yeah,
that they can do in Disneyland too.
Yeah, Yeah, I read something about that. I remember somebody complaining, like they're like, "Why is Disneyland getting this stuff?" But then I think somebody said, well, you just said something similar, like, "Oh, maybe once a Star Cruiser goes down, we'll start seeing more of that. We'll start seeing more of that, stuff all in Disney World." And so yeah, hopefully, I mean, I hope that's the case. I feel like
because the characters, Hera looks great, Ahsoka looked great.
Yep.
The Chopper animatronic, it was awesome. So like, I really hope they bring that stuff to World.
I saw online when they put pictures of Hera up, somebody's like, Hera looks better in Disney than she does on TV. And now, I don't have any complaints about Hera on the show, but I will say that I thought the girl that in the park looked really good. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I was
yeah,
just like,
yeah.
I was very impressed with the makeup. I'm she looks really good for a park character. So
Right, right.
yeah,
Yeah, they do a
so
nice job with that. I love that they do that. I love that
I think
they
it's
have a
great.
show and then they roll out the characters. I think that's awesome. You
Yeah,
know?
I think it's and it's neat to see that because they do that a lot of times with the I noticed they were doing it with the Marvel stuff a lot sooner because they weren't tied into the whole Galaxy's Edge. Like,
Yeah.
originally before they started allowing the other characters in there, they were like locked into that time period. Whereas, like, I remember Marvel, like every time a show came out, they'd have somebody turn up, like, I think they had like zombie Captain America turn up one time
Oh
after they
yeah, yeah.
released like What If, and so I just remember being like, that's really cool. And so now to see those characters for Star Wars, to see them loosen that up and just letting
Yeah.
people starting to come in,
What
is
was like
cool.
when Loki came
That
out?
was right.
That was and every week he was like wearing a different, like first he came out in like the prisoner jumpsuit, and then he had the variant uh uh jacket on, and
That's right. Yeah,
the
right.
following week, and then he came out with the like I think he came out as was it the president one where he was wearing the jacket with the button that said
Oh,
vote for
right.
Loki or whatever.
Yeah,
Uh,
right.
um, yeah, so that was awesome that they did
Yeah.
that.
No, I think it's always fun when I mean, it's it's all about synergy and all that stuff, but it's also
Yeah,
fun too because you're like you said, you have a TV show on, get these people out there. That's what
right.
people.
People want to meet
That's
him, right?
yeah, yeah.
So
So
anyway,
yeah,
that's all I had for Disney. I just thought that was interesting. Figured we'd talk
that's
about it.
cool. Yeah, no, I always enjoy that too, and I always, like you said, I enjoy seeing how they work together and all that stuff. But then the big stuff too, like you said, I had forgotten until you mentioned about the whole other land that they're going to build, and
Yeah,
like that's like a huge undertaking, and it's neat. And matter of fact, just today I read that they announced Disney they're going to invest.
I you know what I'd forgotten about that, but I meant to bring that up too. Yeah,
What's I
a,
forget what
a whole lot of money. I forget how much it was,
yeah,
like, but
like
like
a lot.
billions. Yeah,
Yes. And they're going to invest it in their parks and their cruises and just really,
well, maybe not billions, millions.
I
Billions a lot.
yeah, a billion is a lot, but I feel like it's like a lot of money. Like
Yeah,
it's not, it's not a little bit. They're just going to really invest a lot into the parks, and so, I mean, that's great all across the board. You get new stuff, refresh stuff, and all that. And I just thought that was interesting too, because like it's just from a business end of things. It's neat to see what they're picking and choosing and
yeah.
how it's going to work
Well,
out.
what I've learned over the years, like paying attention to this company, especially during the pandemic when you're having trouble and all that,
Yeah.
like like for Disney, the parks are kind of like the engine. It's like the money making
Oh,
machine of
okay.
of Disney, because they would make so much money off the parks. Like if things weren't going so, like ESPN, like
Right.
famously ESPN doesn't do great for them right anymore.
Yeah.
So like, but the parks did so well that they could kind of
Like
shore
sort of
up.
subsidize and
Right.
yeah.
And now that, during the pandemic when the movies, movies were coming out and all that kind of stuff, that the parks sort of helped to balance all that out. Um, but like, now the parks have been struggling a little bit,
Yeah, yeah.
because, for various reasons. So, so the company's been having some trouble. So, it'll be interesting to see. So I think that's what it's all about. It's like, well, let's dump a bunch of money
Right.
into the park. Let's get these people back.
Right. If you
And
get them to come, give them a
right,
reason to come back and get in here and spend their money. And basically, it said, turn that money machine back on.
right, right. Yeah, because
Interesting.
they make a crap ton of money on the parks. So anyway,
Yeah. All right. So that's cool. Yeah. That's always fun.
do you have anything that you've been up
So
to?
no.
Okay.
No, I would just record, like you said, 2 weeks ago. Nothing. I mean, I've been trying to catch up on some TV shows and stuff, but other than Ahsoka, I don't think anything is even
I don't think it's anything out.
anything out.
Yeah.
I know. Oh, I met Lower Decks started up for Star
Oh
Trek,
yeah, 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 yeah.
but I think I watched the first one and I haven't gone back to it yet. But yeah, other than that, I've been watching a couple other shows that aren't geeky. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it for me. Nothing too exciting.
All right.
Yeah, so we might as well get to it then, because
Yeah, let's get into it.
what I have been doing is watching Ahsoka. It's only been once a week, but I'll tell you, I have really been enjoying it.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
it was a little slow. to get started, I would say. Like the first two episodes, I was like, I liked it. I was interested where it's going, but I was like, well, let's see what's happening here. And then the third episode, I felt it got the ball rolling. And then 4, 5, and then 6, especially 5 and 6, the last two have been excellent. I just
Yeah,
really, really enjoyed them.
yeah, I have to agree. Like I was when we talked the last time, I was a little lukewarm on it.
Yeah.
But now I've kind of like my whole attitude towards the show has changed now, and I'm very into it. Like I feel like the story has really picked up. I don't know what it was about those first like 2 3 episodes. Like episode 3 was better for me, but it
Right.
still wasn't. I still wasn't thrilled with it.
Yep. Uh-huh.
But yeah, really 4, 5, and 6 really have started building the story. Like I,
Yeah.
I think there was like I don't know if there was like a lot of exposition in the first few episodes that I wasn't real into.
I think yeah, there must have been, and I we watched all this stuff, so we were aware of it. But yeah, there must have been stuff like you had to get people caught up and make them aware of the situation. So they
Yeah,
didn't watch Rebels, so it's like, all right, we got to kind of explain different things, and I don't know. A lot of it for me was just like, even though they never talked about it in Rebels, was the whole Sabine and Ahsoka thing. I'm just like, the whole time I'm like, what is happening? Like, I don't remember them
yeah,
training, and here we never saw it. So that was like they were alluding to something that we never saw. So that was
yeah,
a little bit of an issue. One of the interesting things I don't know who to credit for it, but I read somewhere online that they were saying that basically the first couple episodes, everyone was sort of in a state of like, like disrepair, or like everybody was like kind of broken when the
yeah,
show was, like Ahsoka is kind of still struggling from everything that's happened in her past. And Sabine is still, obviously missing and searching for Ezra. And like that's still in her mind. Now, this has all happened the end of Rebels, and then basically the entire original trilogy happened, and then we got to where we are now. So it's been quite some time.
yeah,
And so that was a little bit like, I think that was a little jarring. So until you realize those characters were like in pain and stuff, I'm sort of like, well, what's the problem? It's been a long time. Like, but once they started like, yeah, basically they had to explain their motivations and explain where they were coming from. And once that started gelling, then I'm like, okay, I see what's happening here.
yeah, yeah. It's just gotten and I don't even remember episode by episode, so we'll just sort of
No,
talk
yeah.
about the whole thing. But like it's gotten more exciting. I think there's been some combat, like which is lightsaber combat
Yeah,
and
right.
air, starship combat, which is really cool. Um I just think it's gotten so much better, like and it's like you said, like we're sort of learning why Ahsoka, because I think everybody's like the question has sort of always been, well, where was Ahsoka during the rebellion? Like, what
Right.
was she doing? Why wasn't she a part of this? And maybe we still haven't gotten a direct answer to that, but we're sort of starting to see um where she was, what she, or why she wasn't involved, or like
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So, um, yeah,
Yeah,
I really like it.
yeah.
I really like what we're seeing now, especially the last 2 episodes have been
The
fantastic.
last two have been really good. Yeah.
Yeah,
To go back to Ahsoka for 1 second, I really do hope they at some point provide us with a much more solid answer as to where she was or what, because
yeah,
like we see her, and I can't remember the timeline in terms of Rebels, but like after she fights with Vader in Rebels, and then it's left that it appears that Vader kills her, and then later Ezra pulls her into the world between worlds,
right.
and then he rescues her, or does he send her back? I can't remember. Do you remember?
No, he rescues her, and then what happens?
I meant to go and watch it or read about it, and I forgot.
I don't remember what happens, but he does. He like full on rescues her because it's
Yeah,
like she's in like a temple fighting Vader the last
yes,
time we see her before
right,
Rebels, and it's like the temple thing closes, and
Oh,
those two are in there by themselves,
right.
and you
Yes.
and it's left very open, but you're like, okay, well, that's the end of Ahsoka, right?
Right. Right.
And then Ezra saves her. That's the
Okay.
first time we see her after that.
All right.
And
Yes.
and then I
And
don't remember, like, I remember that happening, but I don't remember what happens
yeah.
after that.
I saw a clip of like where he pulls her into the world between worlds,
Yeah.
right? And I saw that part of the clip, and it was interesting. And it's definitely and we'll get to that, but it's definitely where she and Anakin end up in this one of the later episodes of
Yeah.
her series. But like it didn't finish. The clip didn't finish, and so I'm like, well, what happened to her? Like, because I read something else about the world between. Am I saying it right? World between worlds,
The
right?
world between worlds. Yeah.
Yes. And where Filoni's like, it's not time travel. You're not changing the timeline. You're not doing anything like that. It's just a place to sort of go and reflect and see into different windows of time. So I'm wondering is if I have to go back and look. I feel like maybe he sent her back, or maybe she did go back to face Vader again. And then I can't remember. And anyway, I have to go back and look at that, and that'll be my
Yeah.
homework. That'll be my homework to go back. But like I feel like maybe basically if that's I don't remember if that's the last time we see her in Rebels. Like, if she's that broken at the end of Rebels, like after facing Vader, maybe it would make sense for her not to be around for quite some time
Well,
until.
but we do see her again because she's Fulcrum, right?
Right.
So when does that happen? And I thought, and like that, I felt like was that early on in Rebels?
She was Fulcrum early on in Rebels because I remember at the time being a little disappointed that at the time I didn't care for Ahsoka, and I remember being like, here we go,
Yeah.
here. But then she grew on me, and then within Rebels is when she fought Vader because they were underground with the Inquisitors, and Maul was there, and then Vader shows up, doesn't he?
You know what? I
Yeah,
don't remember.
I know.
Like I truly, I remember all of these moments, but I
Yeah,
don't
but
remember how in what sequence they happened or anything.
and that's where I'm at now too. I thought I had it,
Yeah.
but now that we're talking about it, anyway.
Because she's like Fulcrum pops up. I think it's season 2 of that show,
I
or
think
it's
it's
season 3.
I think it's at the end of season one, to be honest. I think that was like one of the mysteries of season one.
Okay. So yeah, so she's in Rebels early on,
Right. But
but
then
Ezra does save her. So he saves her from when?
I think later on in Rebels, I think she fights Vader.
Okay.
And then even later is when Ezra rescues her. But I can't remember the result of the rescue. Like, does he full on rescue her and pull her? Like, or does she go back? Like, I can't remember that. And after that, I can't remember if we see her again.
Yeah.
So I have to go back and look and see. But my point is like, I'm thinking it's like, if she faced Anakin, Vader, and then basically almost dies, but Ezra rescues her. I guess regardless of where she ends up, whether he puts her back and she escapes, or she goes out a different door in the world between worlds, or whatever it is, maybe if she's like that broken, maybe she just like basically cuts out for the original trilogy.
Yeah.
Maybe she's kind of like pulls a Luke or like a Yoda and goes into hiding, or just
Right.
you know what I mean, does something like that. But I
As
would like
Jedi do.
as Jedi do, right? Yes, but I would really like them to nail that down, just to say like, all right, here's where she was,
Yeah.
because once you put that out there, then you're like, okay, that's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah, and then what made her come back? Well, she heard rumors that Thrawn was back, and then now she's that got her vested. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard because it's like the original trilogy is those 3 episodes, and now they're trying to branch off and tell all the other stories, which I'm all for now. I think I was a little early on was very shell shocked when they started trying to add stuff to that, because for years those were the 3. And then the prequels came out and you're like, I don't know about these, but now I'm like, okay, let's, it's going to go on forever at this point. Start adding to it. Let's have some fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, anyway, back to the regulars, back to the Ahsoka show, and all this. So I mentioned it earlier, but I'll get right to it. What did you think of Hayden Christensen's return as Anakin Skywalker / Darth Vader?
I loved it. Like and we are well documented on this show saying that we're not the biggest fans of the prequels, right?
Right.
And but now I've got I think what we got a bit of in this in this episode is um what we missed in the prequels. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's kind of like
Yep.
we got a little bit of warmth from Anakin, which I think was sorely lacking. Like I think that's
Yeah.
why I was sort of like very indifferent to Anakin for a really long time. Because he just wasn't like the character of Anakin in the prequels. I just didn't think was great. And I know everybody's got like, oh, there's all these motivations for that and whatever. In the end, I think it was just not well acted, and I don't blame him for that.
Right.
I blame the director. I think he was acting the way he was being directed.
Yeah.
And I just don't think he was directed well. Like, I mean, I think we all know, like at this point, it's fairly clear that while George Lucas is a genius, he's not the greatest director in the world.
I think that's very fair, especially when you look at the other actors from the prequels. Like, I mean, you have Natalie Portman, who's like gone on to become one of the best leading ladies, and even then she's very, boring, very just dry. And even Ewan McGregor to an extent. And you know what I mean? So like it was funny. I watched this and I was like, I really enjoyed his appearance here. And I was like, oh, he can act. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like there's, and I thought it was fascinating how he merged Anakin, the movie version, with the Clone Wars Anakin.
Yes.
Who was always, that to me was always very jarring, because you had movie Anakin versus Clone Wars Anakin, and they were two different people to me. I mean, obviously they're not, but just like I never got it. And then he also merged in, and we saw flickers of Vader, which was really cool. But like he also, like, you could see that part of him too a little bit, like the dark side of him a little bit, which was interesting. Like, it wasn't full on evil, but you could see, like, I don't know, he did a really, really good job, man. It was really good.
He did a nice show. And I'll say, like, while Clone Wars isn't my favorite thing in the world, what I did like about Clone Wars is that Clone Wars filled in a lot of the blanks left by the movies, right? Like, so we saw, like, one of my issues with the prequels is that Anakin goes from innocent boy to Darth Vader very quickly, and the explanations are not great, right? Like, right. Or it was too quick, or I don't think it was as gradual enough, but whatever.
Yes.
But like but the Clone Wars gave us hero Anakin, right?
Yeah.
Which we never saw, really.
Right.
I mean, we did, but like
it was whiny Anakin. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was
right.
Like, it was. So in those that in between series, it was very much heroic Anakin.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I always appreciated that piece of it.
Yes.
And I do feel like I got, like, I became more sympathetic towards Anakin because of that, right? Because of the Clone Wars. And I think you're absolutely right. Like, like this Hayden Christensen, I think, blends. Matt Lanter was the Anakin in the Clone Wars, and I think Hayden Christensen in this scene here really merges the two of them really well. Like that scene where they're on the and they're fighting in the Clone Wars, where they go back.
Yeah, that was cool. That was really
and he's
cool.
running through it. Like, the lines he says to Ahsoka in that scene are very, like, Clone Wars-esque.
Yeah, right.
Like, he's like real laid back and kind of joking around with her a little bit. And I was like, wow, that's Clone Wars Anakin. It was pretty neat.
Yeah, I can't say enough good things about it, because I wasn't sure what we were gonna get. I wasn't sure about it.
Yeah,
and I mean, just talk about exceeding expectations. I mean, he just did a great job.
Yeah, and I do have a clip here, like that's another scene of that. But this clip here is just the whole Clone Wars
Oh,
stuff.
this is
This
so
clip
well
here is
done.
just brilliant. I mean, it really is. If you're watching on YouTube, um,
It's yeah,
when they
it's
do the flash and he to Vader is
yeah.
just and then back and like it's
I
just
love that. I
brilliant.
love they did that a
Yeah,
few times, didn't they, during the whole sequence? And
yeah.
every time they did it, it was wonderful. I
It's
mean,
it's it's a little chilling.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I didn't know this until today. You know who the girl is?
Oh, I do. Yeah,
You do know.
she's the actress that played young Gamora, right?
Yes, same
Yeah,
actress.
yeah. She was really good too.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
was.
you know,
She was.
she did a nice job. Yeah, I mean, I can't can't complain about any of that stuff. It was all everything was so well done.
Yeah,
And then
it was great. Yeah, it was great.
yeah,
That was like episode 5, right, where we
right,
got all
yeah.
this stuff, and to go with a little bit more about the Clone Wars scene, um, the drop ships landing in the
Oh
background
yeah,
and the like AT-AT machines, like, and I thought that was really well done because all of that is done in the mist, so it's like it was probably like cheap a cheap way to do it,
yeah,
but it
yeah,
was really well done.
yeah.
Like I just think like you saw like some of the ships coming down in the background, like, and I don't know if they're filming this in the
Yeah,
in the thing.
I assumed it was the volume, but
Yeah,
I don't know. But it was it was neat because it was like right, like it was maybe it came down to money, but to me it read as a stylistic choice. Like that wasn't what was important. I mean, that's back there. You see that stuff, it looked
right.
cool, but it wasn't that wasn't what you're supposed to be looking at. It was all about these two. And so that was just like the backdrop. And I thought it was really well done. Whether it was to save money or not,
Well, I'm sure they were. I'm sure Filoni was like, "Let's figure out a way to get these in here." But it was
Yeah.
like that looked so great when those drop ships or the landing ships
Oh
come
yeah,
down,
so
and
neat.
then the like AT-AT thing. I forget what those things are called.
AT AT
Yeah,
it's something like that. Yeah, AT
that are like lower.
ET. I mean, I know,
Yeah,
I don't know, whatever. Yeah, they're like bugs. I always think of them
yeah,
as like a big bug, with the
yeah.
6 legs and stuff. Yeah,
That
they're
was really
cool.
cool. And then and then all the clones too. And then we got
Yeah. Oh,
um
finally we saw Rex in live action.
right, we saw Rex
Yeah.
in live action, and we get Tim Morrison was doing the voice,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
right?
yep, yeah.
So that was really good. I like it. It's just so and I have to say, like, I think this is when Filoni's at his best. Do you know what I'm saying? When he's talking
Yes.
about the Force and how it works, and how it affects, and like this is when I think he's at his best.
Right. Yeah.
And these 2 episodes or this episode really just highlights all his strengths.
Well, right. I mean, it truly shows that he studied with the master, so to speak. And I
Yeah,
mean, I mean, George, for all for his faults, he also created all of this stuff, and he has it all in his head,
yeah,
And so, I mean, and to work with him for all those years, I mean, Dave obviously absorbed all that information, and it's neat to see him be able to put that to use.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So one of the we were talking about Ahsoka earlier, the character, and so after her experience here with Anakin, they find her in the water. She comes back, and now she's all in white. She's like
Yes,
Ahsoka. The Ahsoka they keep saying Ahsoka online, Ahsoka the White,
yeah,
and that's a direct reference to Gandalf, right?
yes,
Okay, so I figured because you're the Lord of the Rings guy, more so than me. Refresh my memory. So Gandalf was Gandalf the Gray for a while, right? And
yes. When
then
you meet him in Lord of the Rings,
right,
I mean, I guess you technically meet him in The Hobbit, but when you meet him in Lord of the Rings, he is Gandalf the Grey, and
okay,
so he's a wizard, and that was all. Like, if I remember my Dungeons and Dragons, um, when you had a wizard, your wizard had different levels, right? Like, so, if you were a white wizard, that was like I think the highest you could get, right?
okay,
And but there were different, so there was the gray and I think there was a blue one or whatever.
Okay.
But it was like a level that you reach to. But for Gandalf, Gandalf becomes so in the very first movie or in the very first book, Fellowship of the Ring, during that adventure, Gandalf gets killed.
Right.
Right. The Balrog, the Balrog like takes him and they fall into a pit and they
That's the famous.
really
the
famous
shall not pass. Right.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. I think that's in our show open, isn't
Yes.
it?
So that's like what Ian McKellen in that moment. I love that moment. Anyway.
Okay.
So in the second book, you find out, I think, or at least the second movie, you find out that Gandalf didn't die, or he did die, but it was like he goes down, he goes into another plane of existence, and then he becomes Gandalf the White, right?
Okay, all
and so
right.
for the rest of the films, he's Gandalf the White, and that's kind of it. It is very similar, and as I understand it, I think Dave Filoni's wife is real into the Lord of the Rings,
okay,
and J.R.R. Tolkien. So this seems very much a callback to Lord of the Rings, definitely.
Yeah. I saw a drawing that Filoni did online, and it has Ahsoka talking to Gandalf, and Gandalf says something like, "Oh, they said I was dead too," or something like that. So it's like pure, like, yes, he's taking, he's taking that and in a good way reinterpreting it to his story type of thing. So all right, so now she's Ahsoka the White, and so we see her briefly at the end of, I guess, the last episode, and then the one today, the newer one, we see her in the beginning of it, and she seems to me like she seemed more, I guess not more, but maybe less like stiff. Like, did you notice?
Right? I definitely noticed that. She, and we haven't seen her. It's like, you're right. We haven't seen her a lot since these events, but she definitely doesn't seem like this is like we kept seeing Ahsoka with her arms crossed and looking miserable. Like through the first like 4 episodes, and I was like, what is this?
Right.
But it does seem like that was part of the journey.
Right. And I remember we had talked about that. We're like, is that on purpose? Is she supposed to be stoic? I made the joke. I'm like, maybe Jedi are just boring. And now, like, like you said, we haven't seen a lot of her, but it just seemed like she seemed much like warmer, and like the arms weren't crossed, and like, so I found that, I find it interesting. I'm curious to see where her story is going, but also, like you said, like, she, I guess, put her demons to rest in terms of with Anakin and all that stuff. So now she's come out the other side, sort of reborn, sort of, better. And so I found it very, very interesting, a very neat, just a very neat story, like, like the structure and everything. I really liked it.
I really liked how they, because I guess you just, we sort of watched the Clone Wars, and were things I liked and things I didn't like. But I guess one of the things I never really thought much about was the fact that like her, she was, it's like what Anakin said, she wasn't trained to be a Jedi. She was trained to be a soldier.
Yeah.
And so, so I could see her being like, conflicted and like, well, where do I belong? Because I'm not this Jedi, and I'm not really a soldier, and I'm not like, what am I? Right. So that's something I hadn't ever really considered, but I thought was really interesting.
Yeah. I agree with that too. Very insightful. You know what I mean? Very for her character and everything like that.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That she's this, that she wasn't like, they were just soldiers really at that point, and that's all she knows. Like, whereas, Anakin, for better or worse, he was, he didn't grow up or he didn't become a Jedi by being a soldier. It sort of happened along the way, but that's not it wasn't his whole life. Where
Right.
where for Ahsoka it was her whole life.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool.
No, I thought so too. I really, yeah. Yeah, I can't get, I mean, I can't get over how, just like how well done and how they just were able to just perfectly wrap everything, all those, like you said, the different takes on Anakin and just everything, and just wrap them all up into that neat little package. And they just really, man, just really summed everything up. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, they really nailed it. They really
Yeah.
did.
So what do you think now, um, in terms of in terms of the world between worlds versus Force Ghosts? What do you think? What are we seeing here? What do you?
I
What?
don't.
What do you?
I don't even know. I don't know what it is. I'm
I
cool
know.
with it. Like I'm
Right.
fine. I'm along for the ride, and I'll go with it.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know what we're seeing. Like, I don't know. Was that really Anakin? Was it just a vision of Anakin?
You're right.
You know,
That-
does it have something to do with Force ghosts? Is this Force ghost Anakin trying to help her out? Like,
Right.
I don't. Yeah, I don't know what it is.
No, I know. And
And
I kind of like that we don't know what it is. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
on one hand, I'm like, well, what the hell's going on here? But on the flip side, I'm kind of like, I like it. I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it does add. It adds like if they started time traveling, I don't know how cool I'd be with that.
Right.
Like or dimensions. Like I don't need that in Star Wars. I don't want Star
No.
Wars to go there.
Right.
But this lets you play with those things a little bit
Right.
and
Right.
not like fully commit to it. Like that I'm kind of cool with.
Yeah.
Like I like that and I don't know that we'll ever get a real explanation. Just like I don't know that we'll ever get an explanation as to what a Force Ghost is or why a
Right.
Force
Yeah.
Ghost is. I think it's the same thing here. This happens to Jedi, and
Yeah.
you
I
just got to
know.
go with it.
Well, because I was thinking about it, because I'm like, we have our Force Ghosts, and then you have the world between worlds where obviously you can run into Force Ghosts.
Yeah,
And then I think, if I remember right, Ezra was in there, and I think while he was in there, I think that's how he talked to Yoda back in the day. Because the
I
clip I
think you're
saw,
right. I
right?
think you're
And
right.
so I think
Yes.
they were communicating between here. And then two other things that kind of popped in my head where I'm like, oh, it's interesting, and I don't even know if they're going to touch on this, but if you go to the Rise of Skywalker, when Ben Solo sees Han Solo, right?
Right.
Everyone's sort of like, well, what was that? Behind the scenes, Carrie Fisher died, so she couldn't show up, so they used Harrison Ford
Right.
basically
Right.
as his father. But I'm like, oh, I wonder if they could explain that as he's not a Force ghost because he doesn't have the Force, but is that something that maybe a world between worlds type
Right. Right.
situation? Now that was firmly set in the real world, so I was like, I'm like, oh, I wonder if they could kind of tie that in somehow, make that work.
Well, but it was. I mean, from our perspective, it was in the real world, but we don't
But
know. But
yeah,
Ahsoka was reliving
that's
the
true.
Clone
Yeah,
Wars too. So
yeah,
it could have all been a vision. Like I don't. Yeah, I mean, it could be anything.
yeah.
I'm cool with not understanding it. Like I don't need that explained to me.
Yeah, I don't need
You
a
know,
scientific breakdown of it, but yeah.
right?
But one of the
Don't
other things,
overuse it. Don't do it all the
right,
time.
right,
Use it sparingly, but use it sparingly. And if it can, bring back sort of like beloved characters every now and then
yeah,
to interact with, then I'm fine with it.
right, right, yeah. So one of the other things I thought is in Rise of Skywalker when Rey and Kylo went behind their heads and swapped lightsabers or passed
Yeah,
lightsabers, that always bugged me a little bit because I'm like, I understood it was a new Force power, but I'm like, well, how does that work? Like, I get the Force and I get magic, but I'm like, you're passing tangible stuff behind your back. Like it never,
right, right.
it didn't work for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm willing to buy into this, but I need a little bit more information.
right, right,
And
right.
then I kind of was like, I'm like, oh, perhaps this is how that was achieved.
Yeah,
So
right, right, right.
suddenly they can say, oh, well, like, and they're fixing it after the fact, or they're adding to it after the fact. But I was like, oh, if you want to chalk it up to that, now I'm on board.
Yeah, and like the Force.
Yeah, like when
What was it? What was it? The Force Skype or whatever they call it
right,
with the
right,
two of them.
Yeah, because right after in the Last Jedi, he her hands are wet, or after they talk the one time, like
Yeah,
some yeah
there's like water on the floor, and that's
something
how he
right.
knows. Like he gets an idea of where she is or whatever.
Yeah, something I can't. Yes. Oh, right. And even with the yeah, what's it? Yeah, because he's on the one planet. He's like, oh, that's when he realizes she's up on the ship is because doesn't
Yeah,
the ashes from Vader's helmet or something are by his feet or something like that.
something. Yeah, something.
Yeah. So yeah, that's very interesting. Oh, I like that. Oh, I'm beginning to like this a lot more now.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
So anyway, I just for something that was in the car, in a kind of a throwaway in the cartoon at the time, and I remember being like, I don't know about this. After seeing the Ahsoka episode, I'm like, man, I'm on board with this. Like I
yeah,
said,
yeah, yeah,
don't overuse it, but for special episodes, for special times, I think I'm on board with this.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think the storytelling's been really good so far. I really do.
yeah.
And then, and then in the last episode, I
Oh,
guess we should have said full spoilers, but whatever.
sorry, you should know by
Uh,
now.
yeah, but like, the
So,
last episode was really like the last episode we didn't really get much of Ahsoka at all, which I had seen somebody say that before I
oh,
watched the
okay,
episode, and I was like, oh, here we go. Is this another like
right,
Mandalorian episode in the middle of a different show?
right.
But it wasn't that. Like, I mean,
No,
it didn't deal with Ahsoka necessarily, but it did deal with Sabine and
it was
um,
everybody that was right. It was
right,
everyone that
what
was.
Baylan Skull's up to and all that
Yeah,
kind of stuff. So I thought
yeah,
that was really good.
yeah. I really liked this last episode for totally different reasons. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? Like the Anakin episode was great because of what it was and all that stuff. But this episode, man, this really felt like Star Wars to me. Like it
yeah,
kind of seems silly, but like I mean, you had the spaceships and Thrawn and
yeah,
like the stormtroopers and they're all messed
yeah. The
up and
stormtroopers
like
are all beat up. Yeah,
right and but then they're all like Kylo Ren fixed with the like in an artistic style, which is what Thrawn's known for. And
yeah,
I wrote his name down. Enoch is the stormtrooper. He turns around, he's got the gold face of the
yes.
human face or whatever. Like that, I was like, whoa! Like that made I don't know what it was about that,
I know
but
it was creepy. It
it
was
was creepy. And I feel like I haven't seen anything, but I feel like that's like reminiscent of like something from like the 80s or like some show or something where I just
yeah.
I don't know what that is, but I'm just like I was like, whoa, like that was cool, I thought.
I saw that and I was like, that's Ezra. That like before
Oh,
but like
yeah,
as soon as I saw that, I was like, that is somebody, and I was like, I
right.
bet it's Ezra.
Oh, that's funny, right?
So obviously, I was proven wrong.
Well, that's because it was funny because the other guy, he got killed. Whatever his name, Mark. The
Marek, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Marek.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, Ahsoka kills him, but then when she sliced him open, everybody was like, "Who's he gonna be?" And here he was when he got killed. All this like the green energy comes out of him, so
yeah,
everybody's assuming he was like Night Sister magic or something like that.
yeah.
Yeah,
I loved that he was nobody. Like
I do
that
too.
that
Yeah,
absolutely cracked me up.
I know, me too. And even this guy, that's what everybody was starting to say about Enoch, this the gold faced guy. Everyone's like, oh, who is he? Who is he? Who is he? And he's not gonna be anybody, which is
Yeah,
great, which I think
right.
is fun. Not everybody has to be somebody, so I think it's
Yeah,
great. But just going back to the whole Star Wars thing, so like, then like you got they're riding around on those wolf rat things or whatever
yeah,
they were, and like that, and then they find the hermit crab people, and like you know what I mean, like with the rocks on their back,
yeah,
like
yeah.
it just felt very, very like Lucas Star Wars to me, just like in a good way. I was just like, I'm like, it was just so I don't know. I had a lot of smiles throughout the whole episode of
Yeah.
just different things like that
I,
I enjoyed.
I loved the Star Destroyer, Star Destroyer,
Oh,
the what is it, the Chimera?
yeah,
Um, and okay, so was the design painted on that in Rebels?
I don't remember.
I don't remember. So, but I thought that was awesome. Like when
Yeah,
that Star Destroyer and it's all beaten up and
right. Yep.
patched
Yeah.
together, and I was like, that is so cool.
I know that was really cool, and just how they had it like kind of hanging there when they first showed it. I was like,
Yeah,
man, that was cool, right?
yeah, that was a great. That was really great.
Yeah. I mean, I really liked it. I just have some stuff written down here. So yeah, Thrawn and oh, his the official name of his troopers they're called night troopers.
Okay.
They on the subtitles. Somebody I read that today. Somebody said that they're called night troopers.
Okay.
So I thought that was cool. We get to see the Night Sisters in live action. So
Yeah.
the witches of originally they were the witches of
Dathomir. Yeah.
Dathomir, and then we found out that Morgan Elsbeth was also one of them. But then she didn't really look like one, so I'm like, well, oh, what are they doing here? But then when they meet the ones we meet, they're full on Night
Yeah.
Sisters with the makeup and the hair and their voices and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool. And I didn't realize, but I read something today that apparently that part of their story is that they originated from outside the galaxy, the Night Sisters.
Okay.
So I'm not. I don't know if that was something that in the old EU. I don't know where that came from, but if they or if they just decided it made sense. But I just thought it just kind of felt natural to me. So I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I do think like Balin Skull said a couple of things in this that I think is setting up some of that like what is it that early that show that goes back in time that they're setting up.
Oh, the Dawn of the Jedi.
The Dawn of the Jedi. I think
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The Accolade. Is that what you're thinking of?
Yes.
So the Accolade is a TV show, and then the Dawn of the Jedi, or they're calling it that, but that's like going to be sort of like the origins of the Force, or it's going to go way back.
Yeah. So I think, but I call it like him. A few of the things he said leads me to believe that's where some of that is going to tie. Some of what he said is going to tie into because what's that? Is that era is called the Dawn of the Jedi, or is it called something else?
I thought it was called Dawn of the Jedi, that era. But there's also the Accolade takes place during, I believe, the High Republic.
Maybe it's the High Republic era then.
That's when all the books and all those comics. There's a whole They carved out a little area for them all to play in with the books and comics, and I think that's where the Accolade takes place.
But I just a couple of like what he said was like one of the things he said. She said something about the Night Sisters were wanting to leave, or the witches wanting to leave, and then he said, "Well, maybe they're running from something. Maybe they're running from something." And I was like, "That's interesting."
Yes.
And then he said, "What did he say?"
He said something. There was like a great power out here or something.
Yes.
And he wants to basically figure out what it is.
Right. And he said, because this cycle of good versus evil, like he wants to end it or something.
Yeah.
And so all that stuff, like I was like, okay, all of that is really interesting. Where he's going with that.
Well, especially him, because I really like him
I know.
I know the actor unfortunately has passed away, so I don't know if he survives this season or not. But man, he's just like the gravitas. You know what I mean? He's just like
he's very good.
Yeah,
he's very, very good.
And
it is sad. Like I'm like, because if he doesn't die at the end of this episode or at the end of the series, then I'm gonna be like, man, what a missed. I mean, they could find another actor and
sure, but
have him take his place. But he's very, very good.
Yeah, I really enjoy him. Like, whereas Ahsoka, I was saying in the other previous show, is a samurai. She's very much a samurai. Yeah. He's just a Jedi Knight, but a samurai. And Balin Skull is a knight. Like I mean, he's like he's got the sword with two hands, and like he's I mean, he's like armored up like the old knight type of thing. And I don't know, I just thought it was cool. I think he's neat.
Yeah.
One of the things that I thought of, so it's funny that when you heard him talking about the great power, you went back in time, and you're like, oh, he might be setting up something from back then. I was thinking, in the old expanded universe, there were bad guys from outside the galaxy called the Yuzavong.
Okay.
And they did a bunch of books And it was like stuff with like, Luke, Han, Leia, and all that stuff. But they got to a certain point where they kind of told a lot of stories and they're kind of getting the same and they start tripping over each other a little bit. And they said, all right, let's regroup and start telling much more like consecutive stories. And they introduced these new bad guys called the use a Vong. I'm probably saying it wrong.
Yeah.
But they're these guys and they forbidded technology. They were all about like organics. So they like had a lot of like organic stuff grafted to them and kind of like the antithesis of the Borg. You know what I mean? Like instead of being all
Yeah.
cybernetic, it was the other way. And so they came in and basically they were at war with the New Republic for quite some time. And so when he's like, "There's something else out here," I was thinking of those guys. I'm like, "Oh,
Okay.
I wonder if
Okay.
they're going to bring those guys in." Now I don't know
Yeah.
how you could sense them because I don't remember them having force powers or anything like that. But I thought of those guys right away.
Okay.
But who knows? It's fascinating though. It's just like, well, right. At the end of the day, it's like the Night Sisters who are pretty powerful in their own right, and Thrawn now, they want to get out. They're like
Yeah.
they're what are they running from? And I thought that was pretty neat.
We're right. And what busted up was the trip?
That's
What busted
true.
up the Star Destroyer
That's
and the
true.
stormtroopers, or was it
Yeah.
something else?
It's funny you say that because I initially, right, I thought when I saw the ship, especially, I'm like, oh, it's because I just saw that clip of Rebels where the pergola, the
Yeah.
pergola take them, and I'm like, oh, the ship got busted up when they did that. But the other ships came through the hyperspace ring,
Right.
and so now you're like, oh, maybe they've been fighting something out here for quite some time.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Um, I'm excited. So, how many more episodes do we have?
There's only two more. There's only 8
Okay.
episodes total. I thought there was 10, and there's only 8. So I was very surprised. I was just very surprised. I was like, wait, what? Because we're getting we're getting a cliffhanger. I mean, I don't know what they're gonna do, but like I feel like there's an awful lot to.
Yeah.
You're not wrap. I mean, at the end of the day, we know that they've announced a movie with like the Mando universe is going to kind of culminate in a movie. And, I don't know how much longer we have until that movie. I don't know how they're going to, start crossing over Ahsoka with Mando and Boba Fett, and you get the Skeleton Crew show and anything else. I don't know what the grand plan is here. Maybe, and they could have let Ahsoka. They may have plans for like 3 seasons of this or something like that too.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure what they're going to do. Um, so yeah, so we'll have to wait and see.
Does Hera? We do see Hera in this last episode, or do we not see her in this one? Which one does she get in trouble?
That was the one.
That's the one where they leave.
Yes, right.
Okay, because wasn't there something? It didn't at the end of that episode. Wasn't there a suggestion of how they may be able to get to where Sabine went?
Well,
Didn't
that
they
was
have?
when.
Didn't
Well,
they
that's
have?
oh, you thought they had technology to do that?
I saw because she was supposed to go back, like they want her to go back and like stand trial or whatever.
Right.
But then, and I was like, well, that's not gonna. I don't see that happening. But like, I think the droid had like an idea of where they could get to them or something.
Oh, I don't remember now. You mean Hu Yang?
Yes.
Well, he's
I don't know.
trying.
I can't remember. But it seemed like to me, I came away thinking, well, Hera's going to try to follow, and
Oh.
she's going to show up out there too.
Oh, interesting. I don't know.
And then we're going to get a bit, maybe Zeb joins, and then we get the reunion.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm not sure about that because he definitely Zeb's missing. I mean, like I don't know, he's not missing, but I'm like, well, where's Zeb? Like I thought he'd be a main player by now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
CGI.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
Expensive.
Yep, right. We figure, yeah. So right now, Ahsoka and Hu Yang they're inside the whale and they're on their way to those guys, and then Right. Everybody else is out there. Sabine, and then we didn't talk about it, but then Ezra, we finally catch up with live action Ezra,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
pretty cool.
yeah,
And I thought, I mean, he's got a beard and everything, but I thought that guy looked, I'm like, it looks like the guy, it looks like
yeah.
he
I
could
could I could
be,
see that. Right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So I'm not sure. I can't remember where we left off with Hera, other than maybe I remember the fleet showing up to sort of like arrest her or whatever, but I can't remember the end result. I'll have to go back and look at that.
yeah. I can't remember how that ended.
Yeah.
I came away thinking they were going to try to
To
follow them
follow,
somehow,
and
but I don't know
maybe,
how. But
yeah, right.
that was what I came away thinking.
Well, maybe once I feel like they don't have enough power. Like I feel like even if Ahsoka got there and like flipped up a communicator or something, I feel like
They
they don't have
would.
enough power to get out there. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's Star Wars, so they can. I mean, they can make that up too.
Right, right, right.
So,
So
I just wanted to quickly talk about two things. One, we didn't talk about Thrawn himself, so it was kind of cool to see Thrawn in live action.
yeah,
Also,
yeah. He's that guy is good, and he is the guy that voiced him, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So I thought he was good. I mean, they showed some still images of him, and I mean, at the end of the day, I was like, it's a guy in blue makeup. I mean, I
yeah,
wasn't. I've always kind of. I from the books I read the original novels, Heir to the Empire, and all that. I really liked Thrawn in those, and everybody else really, really likes him. And they wanted him in live action, but in the back of my mind, I'm always like, but he's blue. Like, like just from a practical standpoint, I'm like, it's going to be a guy in blue makeup. So when they showed a picture of him, I'm like, yep, guy in blue makeup. But once I saw him there and moving around and doing his things, I was like, okay, I'm on board with this. Like,
he's a little creepy.
yeah,
Like he's way creepier in real life than he was as in the animated.
I thought so too. Right?
Yeah,
I was really impressed with him. I mean, it was
yeah,
it was a nice, pleasant surprise. So I was happy about that.
yeah.
And I mean, he's the big bad, so he'll be. It's kind of unfortunate that they announced that movie, but he'll be around. I can't imagine he's going to be the big bad, so he'll be around until the movie at least. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
so, which is fine. I mean, if that's as long as they have it paced out correctly
Right.
and all that. Yeah,
That gives them somebody to battle.
yeah,
Like I'm cool with that.
yeah. That's right. You know, and one other thing I would talk about was, in not in the previous episode, we see Hera's son. We see Jason Syndulla, who is her and Kanan's son.
Yes.
And we originally saw him at the very end of Rebels.
Yes.
And then now we see him in live action, and we find out that he has the Force.
Yes.
Because he can sense Ahsoka when he can hear her having a lightsaber battle wherever she is, and
Yeah.
oops. And I just thought it was interesting because I'm like, oh, okay. Here, we knew they had a kid, and then, they're going to bring him into the show. He's going to be a character, and now he has the Force, and so here's another Force type character. And I just thought it was neat to see him and just sort of wonder what his future the future holds for him, type of thing.
I had a thought that I wanted to. I had this last week, and I was like, hey, I don't know if they'll go here or not, but I was thinking, all right, so Jason, what do you figure he is? Like 10?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
We'll say he's 10, right? How old would Kylo be?
Right now,
Around now.
He's probably only. I think he's probably like, I think this is like 7 years after Return of the Jedi, so he's probably 7 right now.
Okay. So
I think
wouldn't it be interesting if we get Kylo and Jason at the temple?
Yes.
And like maybe that's how we get that story of what happened.
That would be great.
I
would absolutely.
I was thinking about this the other day, and I was like, you know what? It all sort of lines up.
Yeah. Because I was thinking, there's somebody. Who else was I thinking now that might be at? So Force users right now we have. There's Ben Solo and Jason Syndulla. They're both, and so I was thinking
and Baby Yoda.
And they would be at Luke's Academy. Baby Yoda perhaps could go back to Luke's Academy.
Right.
And those 3. And then you have Ahsoka floating around still. And I don't know who else is floating around. I saw a list recently, but I can't remember. Like the guy from the video games, Cal.
Cal Kestis.
Yeah, but I don't know if does he survive through the original trilogy. Like I can't remember when we saw him last.
I don't know what
Yeah.
the timeline is there. I think
So
when the first game is sometime between prequels and
so he's in
and the original, but I don't
yeah.
know. But I don't know when the second game takes place.
Yeah, me neither. So, but so there's a couple people floating around out here that are, could technically go and be part of the temple. But it's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, maybe it was Baby Yoda. I feel like there's another character. I can't remember. But I remember thinking that. Then I'm like, that'd be really cool to have, you know, it basically, right. I mean, have them show up at Luke's temple, and
Right.
maybe that could be, a whole nother, show, movie, something, but right. Show that because that's what I think everybody needs to see,
Yeah. And
maybe,
and he keeps talking about how he wants to be a Jedi, and Hera's clearly like, I don't want this any part of this.
yeah,
But
right.
because he's going to end up on an island somewhere and not talking to anybody.
Right. You're right.
Just don't need that. But yeah, but I was thinking about that, and I was like, yeah, it all sort of lines up, and I was like, that would be really, and it was interesting. And then I thought it was interesting that Mark Hamill made that statement that he made a few months back, where he's like, "Oh, I think they should just recast."
Yeah.
Luke's like it sort of came out of nowhere.
Yes. Yeah.
And like I don't know where in what context, but it wasn't like it was people were discussing it or a show had just come out with him in it or something like that. It was just sort of like it was out of context. Like, oh, I just don't think they would. So somebody must have asked him about it. So maybe there's discussions there about
probably
how they're gonna handle Luke Skywalker.
Yeah. I mean, like as we've said it before, when he showed up at the very end of Mando season 2, I mean, it wasn't the best deep fake, but for a cameo like that, I didn't mind it. I thought that was I'm like, all right. And I was just so excited to see Luke Skywalker because I never in a million years thought I never thought we were getting Luke.
Yeah,
I thought it'd be some other
right.
random Jedi or whatever because they just dance around the original trilogy characters because they have to, I guess, because they're old now or whatever or not alive. But then when he was in Book of Boba Fett, I mean, again, that looked a lot better and all this and that. But I'm like, man, I would really just much rather just focus on the characters than have to be like, oh, he looks pretty good, like my part of the brain that works that way. So I mean, if they can recast him, I'm all for it, and just it's like, all right, let's go. And like I think I said last time, I mean, they've recast Star Trek now, 3 times now?
Yeah,
I mean,
3 different. Right, we've had 3 different.
Right, and sometimes I like them, and sometimes I don't like them. But it's like, all right, let's go.
The character is bigger than the actor.
Right,
I believe that firmly.
Yes,
and
as I mean, and as much as you want to respect and all that, I mean, so for Luke, fine, pay Mark Hamill, bring him on set, have him consult with the younger version of himself. I mean, they did it anyway when he was doing the other stuff, when they were doing the deep fakes. Bring him on board. I mean, they did it with Peter Mayhew. He did Chewie sitting down, but then he basically trained Jonas, whatever his face is, the guy that plays Chewbacca now. He sort of trained him how to play Chewbacca, and so make it work.
Right, and there's nothing to say that you can't bring Force Ghost Luke back and make him Mark Hamill.
Right.
I really want to get that story. I really want to get, especially since I think we all kind of feel like Luke got done dirty in the sequels.
Yeah.
So like I'd like to see that redeemed a bit. Kind of like what they're doing with Hayden here, right? Like bring him back. I mean, they de-aged him.
Yes, yeah, he looked good, but
he looked good.
Yeah. And I think they're very lucky because, like, I don't think the guy. I mean, he really doesn't look that much older. He's got that type of face, so
yeah, right.
They de-aged him, but part of me was like, I really when they showed the pictures of him before the episode, I was like, oh, that looks like they de-aged him or something. But when I was watching the show, I didn't think
I
twice
wasn't
about.
thinking that.
I didn't
Yeah,
think at all about the de-aging. So there's something to be said for, again, they're not. It's not as drastic as it was with Luke and all that stuff. Now.
yeah.
Uh,
So yeah, but I would love to see that. Like, I would love for them
oh,
to go down that road, like with
yeah.
Jason, and and now you have, like, if Jason's involved, then you have this other cast of characters. Like, you could bring in Hera, you could bring in Sabine, you can bring in
Hmm.
Ezra now, right? And
Oh, maybe, yeah, right. I mean, Ezra's, well, I
uh
guess he's an adult now, but if he
right,
survives, he could be at he could go to the temple too. I
right.
mean, as an
Chopper could
advisor.
be there, like, right, like all these
Yeah,
characters can be there, and it would I would really, like, I really would like to see stories from the temple,
yeah,
like what happened, how it all
yeah,
broke down, everything.
right. I mean, they could, they could easily. I mean, if they're moving away from the TV shows and they're going to start doing more movies or something like that, that could easily just be a movie.
Yeah,
And but I mean, it doesn't. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be long and drawn out. But just, I'd like to see that story of, like, all right, here's Luke starting his temple. Here's Ben Solo, being jerky. Here's
yeah,
Luke realizing, like, oh, here's my vision of this kid's going to kill my best friend and basically, ruin the galaxy type of thing. Like, and you just get a lot more detail of it.
yeah,
So when he does pull the lightsaber and thinks about it, you understand that much better.
right, right.
Because that's the thing. I mean, like, yeah, I can fill in the blanks, and I can get where they were going with Luke, and I get what they were saying, but, like, he's our childhood hero. I think I'd like a lot more detail about that.
Yeah, it's
You
hard to
know,
see. It's hard to see that drastic a change
right,
in Luke.
right,
It
you know,
from without a whole lot of explanation.
right, right. Yeah, exactly. You know, so
So
I
yeah,
know, but
but
yeah, but so I'm looking forward to the rest. I mean, 2 episodes left. I'm really looking forward to it. Can't wait to see where they go with it. I mean, I hope we get ends on a pretty cool cliffhanger, to be honest, because there's too much to wrap up. So
yeah, I'm really like, as indifferent as I was, not indifferent, but I was like, as much as I was sort of like kind of lukewarm about the show initially. Now I'm all in.
yeah,
I'm like, okay, yeah. When it drops next Tuesday night, I'm probably going to be
I know that's
waiting for it.
what's funny, because every week I've watched it Wednesday, and even last week I watched with Anakin. I watched it on Wednesday, and then last night it was like 9 o'clock, and I'm like right there, like I'm like, all right, we're watching this.
Yeah. I last night we had back to school night for Nick, so
Okay,
we were there all night. So I didn't get I got home and I was beat, so we just went to bed.
right.
But like I woke up this morning and I went down on the elliptical, and that's what I did on the this morning. I sat and I did the elliptical and I
Right.
watched Ahsoka,
Right. Hey, that makes it go by fast.
before I could get spoiled on anything.
I know that's it. Yeah. Well, because initially it didn't feel like there was much to be spoiled on, and now all of a sudden,
Yeah,
like, oh, they're getting into some good stuff here.
yeah, because well, I mean, you get spoiled. You knew Anakin was going to be in it from the end of episode 4,
Right. Right.
right? But like, I was seeing, until I sat down and watched it, I kept seeing clips here and there. I knew there was a lightsaber duel. I knew,
Okay. Right. Yeah.
like that kind of stuff. I didn't get spoiled necessarily, but I knew stuff was coming up. So
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't want that to happen like for the rest of it. So I'm going to be watching it Tuesday night at 9 o'clock.
Yeah. Definitely. I'm just looking over my notes here to see if we covered everything, and I think yeah, we did. All right. Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't really think of anything else. I didn't take notes or anything, but I can't really think of anything else. I think we talked about everything I wanted
Yeah.
to discuss. Um, what do you think's going on with Sabine? Did she like was her like did she get like brainwashed there, or was she just going along because she wanted to
Oh, you mean why she
the
decided to go?
betrayal? Yeah,
I think
she's
I
just
th-
trying to get to Ezra.
I
Doesn't
think
really
she's
care.
yeah, I think it's like sort of like, yeah, I think it's
Okay.
oh, right, yeah, yeah, because right. Because even Ezra's like, what's going on? And she's like, let's talk about that later.
Yeah.
Like, I think I don't know, like, I can't decide. I mean, they seem to have a very platonic, like brother sister relationship, and that's
I
what
hope that doesn't turn into a relationship.
me neither. And if it's just like brother sister thing,
Yeah, I'm cool with that, but I don't want
I'm
it to go.
cool.
I don't want it
Right?
to be romantic.
No, but I'm cool with that. But I'm like, if it's like, if your brother was on the other side of the galaxy, like I can get why she may be like, you know what, I'm gonna risk it and come with you because I really like, there's hope, there's like light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, where it's like, Thrawn's there. So my brother's got to be there, or Ezra's got to be
Yeah.
there, So I don't think I think it was just a choice she made. I mean, in hindsight, it was probably a bad choice because now Thrawn's coming back. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Right.
but maybe not. I mean, if she can, they were going anyway. So I guess she really, I mean, I'm trying to think. It's not like she aided them. Oh no, she did give them the map. I'm sorry. She gave
Yeah.
them, she turned over the
She
map.
was why they got
That's right.
there.
Yeah. Right.
If
So
she had
yeah,
destroyed the map, they wouldn't have gotten there, but she also wouldn't
never
have
saw
ever
Ezra again. Right.
Ezra. So that was
Yeah.
her choice.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure, like in that one episode, I was like, did he like
Oh, you think he like mind tricked her or
I was
something?
like, did he turn her to the dark side? Like what happened there? But like
Uh,
no, it was more of a it seems like, especially after this last episode, seems like it was like, no, she just
yeah.
decided I'm gonna do what I want to do and the hell with everything else.
Right. So hopefully she'll
Yeah.
either we'll see her have to sort of pay for that mistake, or she'll, by finding Ezra, he'll be the one to save the day, and so maybe that'll
Yeah.
make her up for it. Um, I don't know. I am finding it entertaining how she's like keeps trying to use the Force, and like the one scene where she was like trying to grab the cup and she couldn't do it, and then they took a shot of the cup just sitting there like by itself. This was like on one of the early
Yeah.
episodes,
Like
and then
mocking her.
yeah. And then like last night she was doing something with her door and everything starts shaking and you're like, is she using the Force? And then here I think it was when the Star Destroyer was
Yeah,
actually
it was
coming
right.
in. Yeah. And I was like, I kind of like how they're kind of messing with you a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
because I don't think like it's not, I like how they're exploring the Force. It goes back to one of the things I did like about The Last Jedi. I liked that Rey was nobody. I kind of always liked that part of that. And it's like, so it's like, and I read an interview with Lucas recently where it's like, he's like, anybody can use the Force, but it's the ones that practice and,
Yeah.
really, really dedicate themselves. They're the ones that could become really good at it. And, it's like, it's like baseball. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody can play baseball, but it's like, can you be really good at? So I just thought I like how they're kind of exploring that and playing around with that now.
Yeah. I really do, I do hope they like one of the things I liked in Rebels, and I hope they can, because I think this just makes the Jedi more interesting. They explored it in Rebels, and I think they touched on it a little bit in the sequels, but never went anywhere with it. The idea that like Jedi may be very good at certain areas of the Force, but not all Jedi are great at all areas of the Force.
Right.
Like I think that's really interesting. That's a really interesting path to go down because it's sort of like I mean it's kind of simplistic to be like, well, you're a Jedi. Everybody has the same powers, right?
Right.
Everyone is equal. Like it's more interesting if like in Rebels they explored the idea that Ezra could talk to animals.
Yeah. Right.
And he was really good at that. And I thought that, like, I really liked that. I really thought that was an interesting. Oh, okay, he can do this. He can speak. He can use the Force and communicate with animals. That's really
Right.
cool. Where and then in the sequels they looked at like healing. Like it would have been and it would just be neat to, if different Jedi had different abilities that
Right.
that all Jedi didn't
Yeah.
have.
I mean, right.
I just think
Originally,
that makes them more interesting.
and it also opens up more story opportunities
Right,
for him.
exactly.
You know what I mean? Because I mean, originally Luke, you're a Jedi, and that's all he needed just to be a Jedi. But
Right.
as you're exploring this universe and getting more into it, it's like, all right, we need to add some more depth to this. What's this guy good at? I mean, early on in the sequel or prequels, Qui-Gon tells Obi-Wan about remember the living Force, and then
Yes.
the cosmic Force, I think was the other one.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, I
And
think so.
I remember he was talking about the living force, and you're like, what's this all about? What's going on here? And it was, again, I think it was a way of just sort of starting to branch out and realizing, just I guess increasing your storytelling abilities type of thing. So
Right. Well, that's what I think it does. It's like if you open that door and you're like, okay, so Sabine isn't great at, moving cups around or
right,
rocks or whatever, but maybe she is really good. But I mean, we've seen all through Rebels that she's really like nimble and agile, and so
yeah,
maybe that's where her
right,
ability lies. It doesn't lie
yeah.
with,
And
all this other stuff.
they haven't explored it in this show too much, but in Rebels, she was always so artsy and all
Right.
this graffiti and all that stuff. And you know, maybe that's part of her using the Force. You know what I mean? Maybe
Yeah.
like that's something she could tap into, like, um, you know, something like that or whatever. Like, so yes, and it also goes to the future where at some point Luke is going to train Leia, and we never really we really don't know when that takes place. Like in the
Right.
Rise of Skywalker, for as much of a patch job that movie was, they show Luke training Leia, and it's like, well, when did that happen? Like, is that happening right now?
Right. Right.
In
Right.
terms of Ahsoka, the timeline, does that happen later? Did that happen earlier? Like, you know, uh, that may have. Now I'm thinking about it. I think that scene may have taken place on Endor. So I don't know if they alluded to that taking place right after Return of the Jedi, maybe.
And why does she stop?
She's
She has a vision, right?
she has a vision that if she went down that path, something to do with her son, something to do with her children. If she went down that path, she would either never have children, or that her child will turn evil, so she stops, but it happens
Yeah, yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
I can't remember exactly. That's something I gotta,
It
that's a
is.
whole
It's
lot.
got something to do with Kylo Ren. And you know what? I didn't think about this until just now. I mean, we know all about Kylo Ren. They never say if they have any other kids.
Right. I mean, I've thought of that. I assume it's, as of right now, it's only Kylo Ren or Ben Solo. But remember early on when everyone was like, "Who's Rey?" And in The Force Awakens, they're like, "Oh, there's a girl on the freighter," and he goes, "What girl?" It's
Yes.
like he almost knew it was like people were. I remember at the time, and even myself were like, "Oh, I wonder if that's like his younger sister that they put
Yeah.
into hiding or something like that." Like I thought that's probably what they should have done, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah. 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 Well, there were a lot of threads. They kept dropping threads that
Right. Yeah.
she was that everybody, and then even doesn't I think Maz says something in that
Oh.
movie that suggests that she that 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 they're familiar with Ray.
Oh, maybe.
Like she's
What
talking to
that?
Han.
Yeah. Oh, maybe. Oh, I can't remember now, but yes.
I forget that scene in the in Maz's
Yeah.
castle where they're sitting at the table. Maz says something about they say something about the girl, and Maz and Han like look at each other or something like that.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
they
Like,
know something they're not talking about.
right. Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. That damn mystery box. JJ
I
and his
know,
mystery. I
freaking
know.
JJ.
Just have a plan, please. That's all we wanted.
Just a story. Have a
I know.
story. Tell it from beginning to end. Don't
And just stick to it. None of this, somehow the emperor returned.
somehow the Emperor returns. It's so funny.
Uh,
I forget who. One of those guys I watch on YouTube that does the movie reviews. I forget which
oh,
one it
right.
is.
Yeah.
And he always puts that clip
I think
in
I've seen, yeah.
whenever he's like somehow.
I think that's
Hysterical.
that might be Screen Crush, maybe that guy.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Is he that guy that has that looks like he works at a Blockbuster? You know
yeah.
what I
It's either
mean?
him. Yeah, I think it is him. It's
Okay.
either him or the other guy. I
Okay.
forget.
I know that's
But I
so
think it
funny.
is. I think it's a Screen Crush guy.
Yeah. All right. Somehow. Is it yeah, Palpatine or the Emperor or whatever they say? Yeah. It's funny. Look, I mean, I don't know. Like, it's so funny because I remember when they showed the trailer and at the end the Emperor's cackling. I remember being excited for it, and then in hindsight, I'm just like, Yeah, that was bad. Like, like
Yeah,
I don't necessarily know if I mind that they brought him back. It's just like that it was just like, the Emperor's back. Like
yeah.
that's the worst part about it.
Well, they just had nothing.
That's I mean,
They just like if they're going to redeem, like I don't know what Ryan's intent was. I don't know if his intent was that
I
like
think I think
Kylo would become the bad guy and there was no
yes.
redemption arc there.
I think that's what I read is that basically his idea was, well, I killed off Snoke, so now Kylo Ren is the bad guy.
Yeah,
And like there's no redeeming him at this point. He's the bad guy. And then that would be the final movie. And yeah, they I think they chickened out to an extent because I mean they I think some people wanted to see him redeemed. There's the whole Raylos and all that stuff. Like
yeah,
um because like I remember I one interview I remember seeing with him. He said like at the end of the movie when Ray closes the door and the Falcon, the ramp of the Falcon goes up. That's her saying like that's basically he seals his own fate. Like she's given up on him at that point and
yeah.
turned. And so I mean, you know, found it very interesting. I mean,
It,
I just wish there was that there's a
yeah.
if the plan had been in place, it would have been
It would. I will say like it would have been an interesting direction to go because up until this point we had not had like there's always like a puppet master,
yeah
right? Like so in the prequels it was Palpatine, and in the sequels or in the
right
original trilogy it was Palpatine.
yeah
Um, so it would have been interesting to be like, no, there's no, this is the guy. Like that would have
right.
been different and interesting.
And I think
But
that's what Ryan, was trying to set up. But
yeah,
I mean, like, that's where I get angry. It's not, I don't care that he killed Snoke. It's not like, and it wasn't him. I mean,
right. I had no love for
yeah,
Snoke. I don't. It
no,
doesn't matter to me.
it's just, but like Lucasfilm in general, you're just kind of like, well, if you're making the second movie and the guy's killing Snoke and you've approved it, and it's not like this guy's rogue making movies. I mean, there's all the, so it's like, all right, well, what's the plan for the third movie? Like, if he's gonna kill this guy, what are we doing here? It's like,
Yeah,
I don't know. And it's funny, I read through Colin Trevorrow's original script.
yeah, yeah.
I read through that, and somebody made a comic book out of it. Like I read it online digitally, and I read through that, or I forget what it was, but it had a lot of interesting ideas in it. I don't know if it would have been
Yeah,
any better than what we got, but even in that, like Kylo Ren goes and like meets this like bug looking monster thing, and here this finds out he's the one that trained the Emperor, not Darth Pelagius, but yeah, this guy's the one that trained Darth Pelagius, I guess it is,
okay.
or whatever. But even in his movie, you get another bad guy. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I mean, I think eventually Kylo Ren does kill him, but whatever. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things where like I just don't think anybody could wrap their head like you said, they made him if he had become the true bad guy, I don't think anybody could wrap their head around like what to do with that. Which
Right.
it's like
Like
that's
because yeah, he's either well, right,
because
right.
I think everyone was so tied into he's got to be redeemed, or everyone's so locked into. I mean, good or bad, everyone mentally is just so locked into the original trilogy
Yeah.
that
I just thought it like because I remember at the end of not Rise of Skywalker. I always forget the second one's name.
Last Jedi.
Last Jedi. Um, like when after Kylo kills everybody and he kills Snoke and
Right.
all that, and then Ahsoka escapes. Like
Right.
one of the things I thought was most interesting is that Hux like is clearly like afraid of
Yeah.
right, and I was like, that's really cool. Like that's interesting, right?
Yeah.
And like what you do with that, and then in the third movie they just sort of let it,
Right. Then it's
Hux became like a comedy, play
right.
they played it for comedy,
Right. I
Um,
mean, they'd play, yeah, even in the Last Jedi, they were early on, they were playing it for comedy, but then at the end there, when he walked in, like you said, he was scared. And I liked that. I liked that was a neat setup. Like, oh no, the crazy guy's in charge now, basically.
right. I had somebody who could control him, and now there's nobody,
Yeah, right.
and that was interesting, I thought, but then they didn't do anything
No,
with it.
right. I know. I know. I can't wait. Someday I would love to see, just it's like the tell-all book, like, what the hell happened?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, whatever. We always talk about this, but you know, I mean, it's one of the things I know that I think people forget is that, like, when they were making The Force Awakens, at that point Star Wars, like, it kind of didn't have that cool shine to it. It was sort of like it needed to be polished off a little bit. And so I think a large part of The Force Awakens was being like, hey, look, Star Wars is cool.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, and then unfortunately ended up being a remake of A New Hope to an extent.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it was just like, look, remember Star Wars? Remember this? It was really cool, and it worked. I mean, it did great, and it succeeded in what it was supposed to do. But in the big picture, it did not make a great foundation for the next couple movies.
No, it was a really good. I agree with that. It was like a really good first movie, and we thought it laid the groundwork for a lot of stuff, but then they didn't. It was like, in retrospect, what that movie did more of a disservice.
Yes. Right.
That it did, like, as good as it was at the time, and everybody loved it, and I remember coming out being like, "Oh my God, it was amazing!"
Right.
And as good as it was at the time, in retrospect, it really undermined the rest of the trilogy,
right?
Because it didn't it created a lot of questions that nobody wanted to answer in the end, or the people that followed didn't care to answer.
Yeah, had all these questions, but the sad part is that they didn't even have the answers to.
Right.
Like, you think in that first movie, if you're J.J. Abrams, and even, I mean, Lawrence Kasdan, who has all these great movies under his belt, like, you're going to create a mystery of, oh, who's this Ray girl? Have an answer, please. Like, have something, like, so at least the next guy knows. I mean, like, how can you not know? Like, that's what
it was.
And like I said, and based on the foundation that was flawed already. So then that's why I think eventually a lot of it just didn't work.
Yeah.
Right. The movies the movies themselves are very well made, very well. They're acted. I mean,
they look great.
Everything, everything is great that way, but it's just the structure. Whereas, like, you go back to the prequels, and like, the story's there. I think George did a good job with the story, but then that's where you see flaws, in my opinion. The acting, the directing, there's more flaws in those aspects of it.
Yeah. I stand by this. I think the sequels are better made films.
Yeah.
Than the prequels. Like, I feel like they look better. I feel like they're acted, like, the acting is better. But it's like you said, like, the story is just not. It's the story that's the problem in the sequels.
Yeah.
Whereas the story was strong in the prequels, the story was strong, and the acting and the directing wasn't great. But in the sequels, the acting and the directing is really good, but the story's not there. Isn't great.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. Well, hopefully.
But hopefully this fixes a lot of.
Yeah, and we've said it before. Just as the Clone Wars cartoon series bridged those gaps and made the prequels that much better, I mean, this is already starting to make a lot of things better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just like, they're filling in some stuff with Snoke over in Mandalorian and different things like that. This whole thing here with Ahsoka and Anakin, I mean, that just was like the icing on the cake for all that stuff to me. I mean, that was just like that sort of like, man, like, I shouldn't even say icing. That was like the cherry on top, so to speak. I mean, that was like a very nice, just kind of wrapped it up, and I mean, that was
it was so good to see Hayden
Yeah.
And it's like I said, did not like I did not like his character in the prequels
No.
at all, but it was so good to see him and really like, okay, this is what this is what could have been,
Yeah.
if he had been, you know, and
Yeah. I
you
know.
know,
It was a
he was
shame.
really good. He was really good at this show.
Yeah. Just yeah. Yeah. I'm like unbelievably, like you're just it was just like wow.
Yeah, I just loved I loved so much that scene on wherever the battle was taking place. Um, the the scene between him and Ahsoka on that planet was just outstanding. It really
The one you
was.
showed, the one we showed earlier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Like their
Right.
conversations,
The
and he
dial.
calls her Snips,
Yeah.
and
It's like
like
yeah.
it was
Like
so
snappy
good.
dialogue and
Yeah,
yeah, it was good. I know. Yeah.
good stuff. So I'm
I
looking
mean,
forward to it.
I am too. I don't think we'll be seeing him again, but you never know, right? You know.
I I wonder,
I
you
know.
know, like maybe at the end,
Maybe at the end, or
maybe
maybe
you get a brief.
yeah.
um
Oh, you get a force ghost. Just he shows
yeah,
up
maybe you
and
get a
just sort
Force
of
Ghost.
just shimmers in the
Right.
Good job.
Because like, I mean, Hayden's a lot younger than Mark Hamill. Maybe you see
Yeah.
Force Ghost Hayden more often. I don't know.
Well, that's interesting too, right? Yeah. You know
Yeah,
what?
I thought it was great.
What I'll wrap it up and I'll briefly say one of the things I did like in the world between worlds is that they were able to play with Hayden's image. So like he was able to go between being like Anakin like young
Yeah,
young Clone Wars. You saw the flickering of like the Vader silhouette and stuff like
yeah,
that. And I mean, that's all, and granted, it's whatever this realm is in here. But like one of the things I always drove me nuts when they replaced the Force Ghost at the end of Jedi with the young Hayden, young Anakin, because I'm like, what? Because one, I'm an old person, and I was like, don't change my movie.
yeah,
But on the flip side, I'm always like, well, wait, why is he the young guy again? Why wouldn't it be old Anakin? And I still don't fully understand why he did that. I mean, I know it's supposed to be like, oh, well, he reverted back before he turned to the dark side, but in my mind, he came back at the end, so he could still be an old man. But my point is that if it were up to me, I think, and granted, this was a long time ago when they made these changes, but I think I would have put those characters. I think I would have almost treated the Force Ghosts as like a flame, like flickering effect, where they would
yeah,
flicker between young Anakin, old Anakin,
yeah,
young Obi-Wan, old Obi-Wan. Yoda would be pretty much the same, but you know what I mean, like.
yeah.
And just to give you basically the Force Ghost can do whatever it wants type of thing.
Well, from a certain point of view,
Right.
Darth Vader betrayed and murdered your father.
Ah, right. That's true.
So the last time before he was betrayed and murdered was when he was
Oh,
young.
that's okay. That's interesting. Yeah. When you look at it that way, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
from a certain point of view.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, frankly, I hope we see more of him. I really do,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
some fashion.
I just for him himself. I mean, I don't know necessarily story wise. I don't want them to abuse this,
Right, right.
but if they have to, it'd be pretty cool to see him again. Would be
Yeah,
really kind of cool. And this is kind of getting out there, but right, if we do get a Luke Skywalker show at some point, how cool would it be to see Luke and Hayden have a conversation?
yes.
Right?
As for like that would be very cool.
Just to see like, oh, you're my dad. Like, like
Yeah,
what's up?
yeah, yeah.
There's some
That would
really
be very cool.
there's some really cool stuff that could happen there, and that there's really, really ripe for,
Yeah,
so we'll have to see. I
yeah,
will say one last thing. Luke is obviously in this time period, and we've seen him, which is great. And I hope they recast him, and I hope he shows up a lot because he's very important. He's too important to be off the board.
right.
Leia, they mentioned in one of the episodes, they said, "Oh, Senator Organa can't stall for you anymore," or something like that. And I'm like, oh, okay. But meanwhile, like Mon Mothma, as cool as it was to see her again, that really should have been Leia, talking to
Yeah,
Hera.
yeah, agreed.
So,
Let's see Leia again.
yeah,
Bring her on.
bring her on, recast her. Let's go. I mean, the
And
character should
if you're doing it via a hologram, like
right.
doing the CG probably isn't a big
It
deal.
might, yeah, but that
If
right.
that's-
If you want to, you're right.
If they don't want to recast.
yeah, if you don't want to recast her, fine. Then use, and again, if it's just a cameo, quick thing, do some CG, that's fine. But if you're going to bring her on into the cast, then recast her.
Yeah. I think they got to recast. I absolutely think they got to recast.
I mean,
there's too much story to be told to not do it,
and to be and to be in this time period, and I mean, Luke and Leia are still major players. Now, poor Han Solo, I even in the books, I remember this is the old universe or the expanded universe, but Legends, he was always like, he was just kind of off to the side. Like he always had adventures and was doing stuff, but like he didn't matter. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, right,
he wasn't. I always felt like Luke and Leia were the ones that were sort of driving the story forward.
Yeah.
So I think you could get away with not. I mean, if you're gonna have Luke and Leia, you better have Han there. But
Yeah, agreed.
So anyway,
all right,
very good,
good enough.
So yeah. So I was just gonna say that's about it for this, and in terms of Geek Hangout or in terms of geek stuff, that's really all that's going on right now.
Yeah, that's it. The only other thing I saw was an Aquaman trailer, which I frankly haven't watched all the way through it yet. I mean, I saw it. It looks okay. I guess I don't know.
I liked the first Aquaman movie. I thought it was well done. I saw the trailer for this one, and while it looks interesting and it's done by the same team as the first movie, I've lost pretty much all faith in Warner Brothers at this point in DC.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for the new James Gunn Superman movie to give that a fresh start. We'll see.
Yeah. Great. Yeah.
And then I think for Marvel, Loki season 2 comes.
Loki's coming up, but
October?
I think I just read that it got pushed again.
Oh, maybe it did then.
I don't know. I don't know if it was like pushed by a lot or if it was just like a couple of days or I don't know.
They're going to premiere it on Tuesday nights again. That's what.
Oh, are they?
I think it's coming up. I think it's coming up on Tuesday or in October, and I think they're going to do the Tuesday night again.
Okay,
like they do with Ahsoka now. So
I don't like Tuesday nights.
I don't know what I used to like when they did Fridays. That was great because it just gave you something at the end of the week. But I think
like Friday night was perfect because I'd sit down after work and we'd we go and I'd sit down and watch it that night. But I could never watch it during the week.
I'm thinking they must find that they get more engagement during the week because
I think that's what they said.
Yeah, because on the weekend you watch it, it's great, but you're not at your work computer or doing whatever, and so people don't. It's not as much buzz. Whereas Tuesday night, all day Wednesday, people are catching up. So that must be what they're.
Yeah, like people are talking about it all week.
Right.
And talk. You go to work and you're talking with your people at work about it, and like that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I still prefer Friday nights, but then again, I'm not making any money off it, so I guess
no, right, exactly. So, all right. Got anything else? That's it.
I do not. All right, so we will wrap it up. I guess we'll record next time after the finale. I would guess.
Yeah, I would imagine. Right, 2 more episodes. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay. All right. So thanks for listening tonight. I'll do the social media stuff this time. You can follow us on Instagram. We're on Twitter or X, whatever it is now.
Whatever.
It's so stupid.
But
we're
going there. I read today he's going to start charging people. So whatever.
Yes, we're probably not going to be on the X very long if you're following us there. But we're at Geek Hangout Pod. I think we got that Threads thing too,
we're
right?
On Threads now too.
We're on Threads.
I think I've promoted something over there, but I haven't done anything. So, but yeah, we're over there.
Yeah. So if X goes down, then we'll move over to Threads.
Yeah.
Facebook.
And if you're listening to the podcast, we're on the podcast.
And we all on
YouTube.
Yep. Yeah, you can check us out on YouTube. Dude, YouTube's doing pretty well. I'm pleased with YouTube. So
that's good.
And you can see our handsome faces. So that's
there you go. Right.
All right. All right. So with that, thanks for listening tonight, and we will talk to you next time. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.